Welcome to this edition of Todd's Video Games. Today I'm going to take you on an extensive walkthrough of the collection. We're going to see over 25 years of accumulating console games, arcade games, kiosks, store displays, signs, you name it. Now this may not be the world's largest video game collection, and it may not be the most valuable video game collection, but I guarantee you're going to see all kinds of crazy stuff. All right, well, let's get this tour started. I'm gonna start right here with this Game Boy full-size store display kiosk. I bought this from a guy in Manhattan, Kansas about 10 years ago. Drove all the way down, put it in the back of the truck, brought it back home. This is a really cool unit. You don't see very many of them. The Game Boy is unusual. It's not a standard Game Boy on this. It's a special one that works with the hardware inside. And of course, we've got Tetris, the most iconic Game Boy game of all time. And then behind me on this cabinet, we kind of have a little bit of everything. We have a complete set of Virtual Boy games. We have some Game Boy games, Super Nintendo games. I don't have a ton of Super Nintendo games because back in the day, I was a Sega Genesis guy. Nintendo 64, which is a system that I do love and I would like to get more games on at some point in time. Then we have some Super Nintendo loose carts and Nintendo 64 loose carts. And then as we come over here, you can see that we have two World of Nintendo display cabinets. These would be in stores such as KB Toys. I remember our KB Toys had one behind the counter, and you would just stare over the counter back in the display and eventually have them grab some games for you to check out. So we'll get into these in a little more depth and a little more detail here in just a bit. And then as we come over here, you can see we have this Atari 5200 display cabinet right here. This is one that I drove to Detroit, Michigan to pick up, and it wasn't working. So one of my other videos here on YouTube is actually the restoration process for this. The Atari 5200 is an unusual system. It wasn't terribly popular. It doesn't have a ton of games, but it does have some cool stuff on it. And then lastly, over here, for this section, we have an Atari 2600 Pop Kiosk. Now, it's called a Pop Kiosk because POP stands for point of purchase. And when I was a kid, they actually had one of these in a Kmart store here in town. And I remember actually having the lady come over and unlock to get me games out of the bottom of the cabinet. The cool thing about this is it has about 30 different Atari games on it, and you could go through a list of games here, pick a number, hit enter, and you could try soccer, some of these games just like this. This is the newest addition to the collection down here, a Nintendo Red Tent system. This is a game that I restored last year. As a matter of fact, there's a lengthy YouTube documentary I've uploaded on my channel that you can check out and see how it went. But this originally sat in a field rusting out. And so I restored it and I put in Super Mario Brothers on one side and I put in golf on the other side. It's a really cool system because back in the day in the arcades, you could play across from each other and play simultaneous games like balloon fight, tennis, things like that. And so I'm very excited to have that here. So this is my Atari Jaguar collection. And I have a soft spot for the Atari Jaguar because long ago, when I was old enough to know better, as kind of an adult, I asked my parents for an Atari Jaguar for Christmas. It actually arrived on Christmas Eve with the Cybermorph game, and I brought all my friends over and we were a little underwhelmed. But some great games did come out for it. We got Tempest 2000 not long after that, which was very fun to play. And we got Alien vs. Predator, which is also an awesome game on here. But I have basically an entire full set of sealed Atari Jaguar games. The system is sealed, the CD is sealed. I have a Battlesphere that's sealed, Battlesphere Gold. That's kind of the hardest game to find on this system. There are some of the releases that came out later by Songbird Productions, places like that, that I have boxed copies, but I don't have sealed original copies on. Still working on it, but eventually I will have a complete sealed set. This Jaguar kiosk is really nice. I always love this one because of the black look to it and just the art on it. This one actually came from St. Louis. I drove over there one day to pick it up. It was from the nephew of a guy that actually took this, it disassembles into two pieces. He'd put it back in the back of his hatchback, and he would drive it to different stores on the weekends to actually do demos of the Jaguar. So it didn't stay in one location, it traveled around. So this is a pretty awesome system. So this is my Pokemon Snap kiosk. These were mainly found in Blockbuster video stores, probably in the early 90s, mid 90s. And they have a Nintendo 64 inside, but it had this cool option to put your cartridge in the slot on the outside and bring up your actual saves from your Pokemon game. And in this game, you take pictures of Pokemon along the way. So what you could do is buy these little credit card looking things that had Pokemon on them from Blockbuster, slide it in, select your photos, print them out on the thermal printer. It's a pretty cool operation. I never did it back in the day, but we can do it now if we want. Then up here we have a couple of Nintendo DS Pokemon display boxes. And as we move to this wall, this is my North American collection of licensed and unlicensed NES games. So this is a full set of all Nintendo games, all complete in box, all carefully arranged in alphabetical order, as my wife likes. And so I have these on the walls here. Down here, I have a Mario statue and a Pikachu statue. Now, I'm not exactly sure where these were. People would say they were in World and Nintendo stores, but they're around, so they were probably in more retailers than that. There's also a Star Fox and some other characters that I've never gotten around to purchasing. But I do have Mario, I do have Pikachu. And then back here, we have a Super Nintendo kiosk. This is one that has the stand with it. Sometimes you see just the countertop part. This is one that I purchased down in Tennessee and drove down to get, about 10 or 15 years ago. Great system. Here we have a complete set of Wii U games. I don't have all the special editions and all the boxes and things like that, but this is one of every Wii U game. Down here, I've got some other games, some Atari games, and then I also have this cool Nintendo DS download station. This is a store display rack that came in a system that also had a version for Super Nintendo and a version for Sega Genesis. I have some of my Game Boy games in this particular display. And then right next to it, I have an actual Sega Genesis store kiosk. Sega Genesis brings back so many great memories for me. The system came out right when I was starting college. So we had many nights in the dorm where we were fighting each other in John Madden football, things like that. And above it, this sign right up here, is my newest addition to the collection. This is a Sega Sonic Coming Soon sign. So I've backdated it back to 1992 with a couple of the winter releases. Along this wall, we have various Sega Genesis items. We have the original Genesis box itself right here. Game Gear. We've also got some other Sega systems like a Saturn, Master System stuff, 32X and Nomad. This Nomad's actually one that I bought Cindy for her birthday way back in the day.
Awesome system.
We have some 32X games, which was an add-on system for the Sega Genesis, and some Sega CD 32X games. Sega CD system, some of the Sega CD games, an actual Sega activator, which was a thing you put on the floor that would help track your movements. Up here we have various Sega Genesis boxes. We have some Game Gear games. We have a lot of Sega Master System games. This is something that Cindy and I have been looking for a lot more lately. We think the boxes are really cool with the grids on them, and it's something that people don't really collect much. And then we have our Sega Genesis collection. We have many of the games here, more Sega CD games, and then quite a few Sega Genesis games. It's not quite half the full set, but it's getting pretty close. I would love someday to have a full set of these, so we keep working on this set. And then lastly, on this corner, we have a Virtual Boy system in its box and a Virtual Boy full-size kiosk. So this is another one that I drove to Kansas for. As a matter of fact, I drove to Kansas twice in 1 month, one year. This is very, very cool. Virtual Boy A cool system for me, I always like 3D systems. I like technology like that. Wasn't very popular, didn't sell very well, was retired pretty quickly by Nintendo. But this store display is really great, and I'm glad to have it. All right, so here's what we have on the top shelf of the world of Nintendo cabinets. We have some store displays that I really like, some Game Boy Advance displays, Mario Party sign, a Kirby sign. Our kids love Kirby games, so we always try to pick up Kirby stuff. Mario Pinball Land for Game Boy Advance, Mario Golf, and then way back there we have Super Mario Galaxy 2 for the Wii box, and a Super Princess Peach, which is one that I often have people ask about. This is a very cool item of itself that I'm really happy that I have. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and open up one of these World of Nintendo cabinets so we can look at some of the games inside. So starting at the top here, we have a Game Boy Advance autographed by Shigeru Miyamoto, the Nintendo legend who designed games like Super Mario Bros. And Legend of Zelda, and continues to amaze us with his work. He doesn't sign a lot of autographs. I won this in an auction, charity auction for the Japanese Tsunami Relief Fund, and so I've got it here. It's a really, really cool piece. Up across the top, I've separated out my Nintendo black boxes from the other boxes. So that's the black box collection of games. Basically the original set of Nintendo NES games. On this shelf, we have two Nintendo World Championships. These were used in the Nintendo World Championships back in 1990, and they were given to some of the competitors at the end of the competition. They're all numbered, maybe around 100 exists that we know of, each individually numbered. So they're very rare, very valuable. Going across this direction, you can see we have some other sealed games, Legend of Zelda for the Super Nintendo, a Zelda 2 NES, Majora's Mask for the N64. And then if we drop back down to this shelf, we have one of the more rare games in the collection. This is a Stadium Events, complete in the box. It's a very, very difficult game to find, particularly in its box. These were only out for a limited period of time before Nintendo recalled all of them because they bought the rights to the pad, bought the rights to the game, re-released it themselves as a different game. So not very many of these exist. This is a very nice one. As a matter of fact, the cartridge inside has the highest grade that WATA has ever given a Stadium Events cartridge. And then this Final Fantasy is also a very, very rare example. It's a VGA 90 Plus, which is basically about as high as they ever grade any Nintendo game. And this is a hard game to get such a good grade on. So this is a really cool one. We got this at a yard sale. And so it's amazing that it graded so well. Then as we go across this shelf, we've got some other graded games like Dragon Warrior and Ocarina of Time, which is my all-time favorite Nintendo 64 game. And then we have some of the rare Nintendo NES games. Down below, just some other Zelda games that are popular. Earthbound for Super Nintendo, which is collectible. And over here, some people would argue even rarer than the box for Stadium Events is the box for Athletic World. It too was part of the same series of games. You can see the pad back there that were recalled. And then along the bottom, we have some a variety of Nintendo NES systems, and same thing over here with this cabinet. So here we have the Power Pad version, some things like a GameCube Game Boy player, a Power Glove, which is infamous on how bad it was. And then you start to see some of my other systems that I collect for Pokemon games for the Nintendo DS, including these longer box versions, these Walmart exclusives. These are really hard to find. And then we have some rare 3DS games. On this shelf we have Barbie Gloomenglam, I say it wrong every time, Gloomenglam Pops. And this is basically the hardest 3DS game to find, especially sealed. So I think there's probably 5 or 6 out there that I know of. And then we have a Game Boy Advance stored kiosk display, a little tabletop display. A sealed and boxed Game Boy Micro that I bought from a store that was closing down years ago. On this shelf we have several examples of The Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker. This is one of our kids' favorite games, that along with Twilight Princess. So I have some sealed Twilight Princesses over here as well. and Super Mario Sunshine and Super Mario Galaxy. So we get into a little more modern era of the disc-based games. And then across the top and some hidden behind are basically other Nintendo NES games that are sealed. I just bit the bullet one day, sent them all off to WADA. I had them all graded at once. Uh, Two reasons: I like to have them encapsulated. It's nice to know they're authentic, and it's kind of fun to see which ones grade higher than others. So that's basically what's in the world of Nintendo cabinets. Okay, so this is the arcade in the basement, and here we have Gauntlet. This is an awesome old Atari game, a 4-player game, big quarter muncher, with everybody playing as different, basically RPG type characters, making their way through a maze. Love the Gauntlet, great game. And then we start, basically go back in time from the oldest to the newest as we go along. So here we have an Atari Asteroids game that I fixed up, about 3 or 4 years ago during a time where I bought 4 games at one time. So we have Asteroids, Centipede, which was also part of that same purchase, and Space Invaders. So these are 3 of the 4 games I got at one time. Then back here we have the old classic Pac-Man that I can remember actually standing in line waiting to play. And Donkey Kong, classic Nintendo arcade game. On this side, we have basically my all-time favorite arcade game, which is Gorf. And the reason I love Gorf so much is because it mixed a bunch of different games. So it mixed Space Invaders and Galaxians and some games like that. And so I loved playing this when I was a kid because you felt like one quarter got you 3 or 4 different arcade games. Here we have a Robotron 2084. I didn't play this back in the day. This is a game that I restored extensively, and I'll probably do a video on at some point in time. This is one of the hardest games you'll ever play. And I'm terrible, I think, at it. But my son and I, my oldest son and I have a competition going, Austin and I do. And every time he sets a high score, I come down and play until I set the high score. And then he does it the next time he's home. Unfortunately, he's now set a score that I haven't beaten in 2 years, so it's just sitting here. Another classic game, Galaga. Lots of people want to have a Galaga in their arcade, and I was one of them as well. This is a great game. And then as we go around to the other side, over here we have a Tempest, which is an Atari early color vector game. So the graphics are really bright and colorful, but they're drawn differently on the screen than you would with a game like Burger Time, which has raster graphics. So instead you have a bunch of different lines. Loved playing Tempest. They had one of these right on the pool deck, like right next to a swimming pool at a place I used to stay all night every so often. And I would get out of the pool all wet, put my quarters in and play for a bit, and then jump back in the pool. I have no idea how that passed any kind of safety regulations. Then we have a Burger Time. This is one of Cindy's old favorites too. This is a game that I was always really good at. I'm not as good as one of my friends who's actually over in Ohio, the Guinness World Record holder, and he just got a certificate today. So maybe if I keep playing, I can catch him. Here we have Cubert. Cubert's another one of those games that I like. Played a lot back in the day that I actually was pretty good at as well. Favorite thing about Cubert is when he falls off the side and he curses and flies all the way down. Okay, so here's Frogger. Frogger is one of these games that I played a lot when I was a kid. And I think I played it so much that I started having dreams where I was Frogger and I was leaping over from one log to the next and I was trying to get to the end. But no matter what I would do, I would keep going and going and going. And those little cubes at the end that you jump into, I could never get to. So at that point, I decided I probably should not play Frogger anymore. Here we have a Play Choice 10 system. These are really cool. Nintendo made these in the mid 80s, a lot like that Red Tent system. And they had slots inside for basically 10 different Nintendo type games, very similar to the NES versions. Here, you can see on the top screen all the games that we have in this system. Play, Excite, Bike, things like that. Pretty cool. Track and Field. This one will kill your fingers. I played this a lot in the mid 80s, early to mid 80s, 1983. Konami Century made this. It was one of those where you just had to tap as fast as you could to run. And so that's got lots of good memories for me. Paperboy, this is a mid 80s game. This is basically Gauntlet and Paperboy are kind of the same era, same type of game. We played these a lot at the arcade up in Bloomington, which was called Aladdin's Castle. It was one of the Aladdin's Castle franchises. This was one of the first arcade games I bought. We bought the mini golf first, and this was number 2, I think, about $75 back at the day at an arcade auction. Worth a lot more than that today, but still working great, lots of fun. And this Sega Turbo, this is actually my second Sega Turbo I've owned. I sold the first one, then I decided I want to buy another one, so I bought another one. This is one of my early memories as a kid playing a racing game. This one's still fun to play, also very hard. So this is it. This is basically the main arcade in the house, and I hope you've enjoyed the tour of it. Here we have a Nintendo GameCube kiosk. This one I bought in northeastern Ohio. It was a long road trip. Took kids with us when they were little. Well, we are in Ohio. Packed up. Try to drive it back. It's West Virginia over there. And then here we have some store displays, including a store cabinet from GameStop with a few DS and 3DS games in it. Some more display items. And then this is the GameCube collection on these shelves. Below them we have basically what I would consider the better DS games, games that we might actually want to play or are worth a little extra money. And over here we have some box sets. We have some from different systems, but we have the majority of the 3DS collection. So this is a sealed 3DS collection that's complete, including all the box sets except for one. I'm still missing a Lego Jurassic Park set that I did not know existed when I was finishing up this collection, but I do now, so I'm on the hunt for one. On this wall we have about 2/3 of my Nintendo Wii collection, something I've been working on quite a bit over the last couple of years, and also this really cool Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess standee. Alright, in this corner of the basement, we've got a couple of pinball machines, the only 2 pinball machines that we have. But they're good ones. We have Super Mario Brothers. Oh. There you go. Now you're moving. We have a Simpsons. And we also have this recent pickup, a Budweiser Tapper.
So this is Mini Golf. This is the first arcade game we ever got, and we used to go to arcade auctions when we lived in Indianapolis. It is my all-time favorite game ever.
All right, so this is Super Strike Bowling. I picked this up a couple years ago down in Tennessee. It's a really interesting game because it has an actual pool ball that you throw in like a bowling ball. Just like that. We got a little black ball we like to use at this one. And Cindy is an expert. This is an additional arcade area we have here in our house. With more modern games and some racing games, here we have an NBA Jam Tournament Edition, one of my all-time favorites. We have a Monkey Ball by Sega. This is a Sega Naomi game and a Sega Universal cabinet. It's interchangeable with some other games. You can change the control panels on these and the games. This has like a GD-ROM inside with the games on it, and has this awesome monkey banana controller for controlling. Over here we have a PGA Golf Team Challenge. This is also a fairly modern game. Great golf, has an online community that's still active, and I can get on, I can play tournaments against people all around the world. Have Virtual Racing here by Sega, an early 1990s game. I had this in my old office long ago, one of my first games that I bought for the patients to play. We even had an all-day racing tournament on this game, which was awesome. Here we have an Atari Race Drive-In. This is one of my favorites. This is a very unique cabinet. It was very expensive back in the day. Instead of really being a racing game, it's more of a driving simulator with loops and courses. Very hard to play, also very popular here in the arcade. And then the most modern game that I have is this NASCAR Team Racing, which Cindy is demonstrating. Just like that. She says she's never played it before today.
I haven't.
Here we have some more of the collection. Got a nice Trinitron TV for doing any kind of old school gaming. That's got a Sega Master System hooked up to it. PlayStation kiosk right there. TV not working right now, but we'll get one for it. On this side, we've got a Wii kiosk with the Cyberbike. PlayStation 3 kiosk, Wii U, Amiibo. Got an Xbox kiosk. More of the collection over here. And then in this room, got a PlayStation kiosk, Dreamcast, Xbox 360. Back here we have a Virtua Boy, basically countertop kiosk version. The Nintendo 64 kiosk. And then I've got an old kind of slot machine and a cash register from a Sears here in town. That was 20 bucks, couldn't pass it up. All right, so here's a little bit of a deeper dive. We got the King with his 3 fantastic Xbox games right here from Burger King. On this wall, we've got some extra NES boxed games. And if we come over here, this is really cool because this has a lot of my childhood in it. These are a lot of Commodore 64 games. And then we have a lot of old PC games, including some of my old favorites, the Might and Magic games. Most of these are games that I actually owned when I was younger, including the King's Quest and the Leisure Suit Larry's, those kind of games. Yeah, I got this for Christmas when I was in high school from my parents, so they were pretty cool. And then if we go back to this wall, we've got some of the bigger box stuff for the Nintendo DS. We'll talk about the Nintendo DS here a little bit more in just a minute. And if we come back around this direction, over here I have my extra NES carts. I used to have 2 full sections of these, but over time I've tried to help other collectors out, give them what they need. So I'm down to just these now. And then over here, just some various things, extra Sega Genesis boxes, 3DO systems, TurboGrafx-16 systems, things like that. And then back around this wall, same thing, more various systems, another 3DO system, some Jaguar stuff. And then over here, various things, my Sega Saturn games, a Game Boy, just little things. And then back here, I go really old school. We have an old Intellivision, some Intellivision games, an old Odyssey 2 and games, even all the way back to the Fairchild Channel F system, one of the very first home arcade systems, and some ColecoVision stuff. And then if we come back to here, we've got this really cool Legend of Zelda Phantom Hourglass store display. And then all the way down this wall, coming all the way down through here, is a full set of Nintendo DS games. And there are a lot. There's about 1,800 games, and not including all the various box objects, the special editions, things like that. So this took a long time, but this is a full set of DS games. Then up here we have some various things, that old Sega Pico system, which was made for little kids, which is pretty cool. Kind of a big magazine collection, lots of Nintendo Powers, some of the old Commodore magazines I had back in the day, an Odyssey system, this really cool Microvision, one of the very first handheld systems. And it's really cramped back here, but this is a little more modern with my Xbox 360, some PlayStation 3 games, Sega Dreamcast, that kind of stuff. Then we'll swing back around to this side. Here we have more PlayStation collections, some extra Wii games. Kind of crammed back in here, some extra Wii U and DS games. Always have to reserve more shelving because I keep buying games. And then this is the rest of the Wii collection that we have right now. About 2/3 of it at home, 1/3 of it here. Eventually I'll get them all combined somewhere. And then as we come along this wall, all kinds of various things. We've got some store displays, DS stuff, bins full of all the various little items that the kids picked up over the years. Lots of video game store boxes, display boxes, including some for some of the big box cubes for Nintendo DS. Got a couple boxes of those. Continue with our variety of promotional items that we've picked up over the years. Bins and bins of that. And even onto this wall, it just continues. We've got lots of manuals, Atari cartridges, ColecoVision cartridges, oddities that I found over the years, like the signed score from Donkey Kong Country. So these sections here just have a little bit of everything. Then over here we have a brand new box Atari 7800, which I think I picked up at a yard sale. A giant box Atari 5200 Super System. And a lot of my Atari collection is actually here, particularly Atari 7800. We're working on a full set of sealed games here. We're about 90% of the way done with that, I believe. And then some more Intellivision games. And here we have another hodgepodge of all kinds of gaming goodness, old Super Nintendo boxes, some of my loose consoles sitting down here, Oculus Rift development kits. Yes, I got one of the very first Oculus Rifts back in the day because I'm that big of a nerd. Different toys, phones, accessories, all up through these cabinets right here. Some more World of Warcraft stuff. Super Mario cereal, which I'm sure is delicious. And a little more modern, some of the Wii box sets, things like that. we have the office arcade. These are games for my patients to play while they're waiting to get their braces adjusted. So here we have a dual Daytona Racing. Vapor TRX, which is a pretty cool racing game. Crazy Taxi High Roller. A Power Putt Golf. Street Fighter Alpha 2. We have a Centipede Cabaret Style. And a Pac-Man Cabaret Style. Been getting my collection organized a little bit. Some new shelves. New sign. And currently 35 games short of a full set of Nintendo games.
Welcome to Endgame Todd's Hole on Fire Edition. Boom shakalaka.
Well, that's it for the tour. I hope you've enjoyed it. That's 25 years of collecting video games, arcade games, displays, kiosks, and boy does it add up. So as always, if you liked the video, I would love it if you would like and subscribe to my channel. It motivates me to make more videos just like this. And if there's something that you would like to see a more in-depth analysis of, just let me know in the comments. I appreciate the collecting community, and I appreciate all of you for watching. And until the next episode, that's it for Todd's Video Games.